This is Johnny and Jose with TigerBomb MMA, and tonight we'll be going over UFC Fight Night Ladd versus Dumont, going over the entire card, giving you our thoughts, predictions, possible parlays at the end. It's a very short notice card, very interesting card between two, well, I guess one featherweight and one bantamweight moving up to featherweight, not by choice. But we'll begin our fight card with a interesting bout between Jim A1 Miller. Did I say A1? I keep calling him A1. It's A10 Miller, not the steak sauce, versus, oddly enough, another theme of food, Eric the Ghost Pepper Gonzalez, uh, taking place at lightweight 155. Currently, the odds on this one looks like currently no odds on this fight, being that it's short notice. I did some tape watch on Eric Gonzalez just because I've never heard of this guy. I know he's coming into the UFC. He's fighting out of Los Angeles, California, so that kind of piques my interest a little bit. So I did some digging on this guy, watched as much tape as I could, and there's not a whole ton out of his most recent fights. He fought a guy named Samuel Alvarez, who's 5-3, and a guy named Oziel Rodriguez, who's 7-5, which it says here that he knocked him out, but I couldn't find tape on that. I did find tape on him fighting former UFC fighter Humberto Bandenay, where he thoroughly got whooped. And I did see one of his knockouts over some Korean fellow. But watching this guy fight, I was not impressed by his skill set. He is very, very hittable. He is very wild, very reckless. His strikes are not disciplined. Like he throws kicks, but he doesn't seem to know how to properly throw a kick. Like anyone can kick, of course, right? But to throw a kick professionally, UFC caliber kicks, this guy does not have it. And although the age difference is nearly 10 years, 39 years old for Jim Miller, we've seen Jim Miller in there. I know he's getting older. I know he's not the same fighter he was 10 years ago, of course, but he still has enough left in the tank to fight and beat caliber fighters of Eric Gonzalez. Um, yeah, Eric can probably swang and bang and clip Miller, but I don't see that happening, man. This guy's striking is very, very sloppy. I mean, he can crack, but his primary game plan from what I've seen in tape, and maybe someone out there in the comments, if you want to enlighten me on Eric Gonzalez, if you know more about him than I do, but from what I could see, he tries to take it to the ground, and his takedowns are pretty. Oh man, I try to be very nice at times, especially with UFC debuts, but they kind of seem pathetic, man. He goes so often from a distance to just kind of push you up against the cage from very far out and try to take you down. It just does not seem like he's going to be crafty enough to beat the crafty Jim Miller. I don't know what the odds are going to be. I'm assuming Miller is going to be an overwhelming favorite, but I do have Miller to win this one. Honestly, of course, submission is always the key, right? With Jim Miller, he's a submission machine, but I wouldn't be surprised if he happens to knock out Eric Gonzalez. So his striking is that questionable that I can see Jim Miller just timing something, waiting for a wild overhand to come, and he just cracks Jim or Eric. And while he's wanting to submit him, he accidentally knocks him out. But I do have Jim Miller to win this one by first round submission. I don't see a way Eric can win this one.
Yeah, I think this is Jim Miller's fight, his sort of comeback fight in a sense. This is really his. He has his choice as to how he wants to win this fight. I actually think he's going to get him on the ground and school him on the ground. I think he very well may knock him out, but I think there's a better chance of him catching a kick, or possibly just changing levels, getting him to the ground, and getting a rear naked choke, taking his back, and then ending in the first round. So not really much to say about Eric. It's more on Jim Miller. Sure, he has a 14-5 record, but this is outside the UFC. You come in with that kind of record in here, you better be ready to go. But unfortunately, they're not giving him. Sucks for Eric. They're not giving him Clay Guida or something. They're giving him Jim Miller, who's going to jump on the opportunity to jump on this guy's neck. I don't see Eric, getting out of the submission like Volkanovski. So yeah, he's going to come in with a L straight away. So he better wake up after this and just realize that he's got to take his training up several notches, to deal with guys in their prime. Because Jim Miller's out of his prime, but I think he still has enough whoop that ass, considering he's fighting out of Whippany, New Jersey. I don't know if that makes any sense.
But I will say I found the odds because my dumbass was looking in the wrong spot. It's a minus 200 for Jim Miller comeback on Eric Gonzalez plus 165.
That's not bad. I mean, I wish the odds were closer just so you can make more money off of Jim Miller. But I mean, I guess they are what they are. But for sure, I'm putting Jim in a parlay.
Next bout at bantamweight, we've got the return of Brandon Killer B Davis versus Dana Batgerel. Interesting fight, another very short notice bout. I forgot who Dana was supposed to be fighting, but we've got Killer B back in the UFC, and currently the odds on this one nearly identical to the previous. We have Killer B plus 160, Dana Batgerel minus 200, and I looked at this fight. I'm like, man, I remember Brandon Davis in the UFC having very close fights with, the likes of Giga Chikadze and Mr. Perfect Kang Kwong Ho. And, very, very, very interesting fights that he was in the UFC. Very tough guy. He's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu under Alan Belcher. So this guy has always kind of been a fun fighter to watch. And I'm thinking, man, this guy could probably be the guy that, decisions Dana Batgerel at those odds. But after I was looking at his record outside of the UFC, he's 4-0 outside of the UFC. So I'm like, oh man, this guy's like been putting in work. So I look into his record, and he's beating absolute bums, right? He's beating 3-3 guys, 4-4 guys. And then I looked at some guy's record. I think it was like Ray Trujillo. And I looked at it. I'm like, okay, he's had 21 wins and 30 some losses. Like, that's not always a horrible record, depending on when he's losing these fights. And I kind of go down on Sherdog and look at his record, and he has like 15 straight losses. I'm like, Jesus Christ, Brandon, you're beating bums. And I look, oh, Josh Huber, that sounds familiar. I think I just recently saw tape on Josh Huber, and I watched the fight. So I'm like, okay, he's fighting a pretty decent guy. He just recently fought an LFA. And I'm not here to make accusations, but it looks like John Huber kind of quit in that fight. He got hit in the stomach, like with a pretty decent left hand, and then he continues to walk forward, and he puts his hands down. He looks like he just gave up. So I'm like, what the fudge? So yeah, I'm not sold on Brandon Davis coming in here on short notice and beating Dana Batgerel. This guy's got some nasty striking. Currently, he's on a 2-fight knockout streak after losing his debut to Haile Alatang. Very entertaining fight. This guy, I think he's been making the improvements. His striking is very, very crisp, very clean. I mean, when he lands with power, and he's training out of Jackson Wink, although that's no longer the same camp it used to be. I can see Dana, I don't want to say knocking out Brandon, but I can see him hurting him on the feet multiple times. Brandon, his last fight against Josh Huber, I don't know if he just had zero respect for Josh's stand-up, but he seemed very, very anxious just to stay on the feet. Like, he not one takedown attempt did I see, not even setting it up. He just wanted to stay on the feet, and he looked very slow on the feet. So I can see Dana easily winning this one. Potentially, I want to say maybe a knockout, but it's really tough to say because Brandon's a tough guy. What I'm thinking is Dana wins this one by decision. I think his striking is going to be too much. Of course, there might be a chance that Brandon does implement his ground game in a fight against Dana, but training out of Jackson Wink after fighting Haile Alatang, a pretty decorated wrestler himself, I'm pretty sure he's going to take the Chuck Liddell approach and just use reverse wrestling and stand and bang. So I got Dana Batgerel by decision.
Yeah, I was looking at his name. I don't know what the translation to Mongolian is for storm, but some sort of a Batman reference would have been pretty cool, for his nickname. But I also have Dana. Yeah, I mean, Brandon Davis does have a puncher's chance, but beyond that, I don't really see him dominating Dana beyond like maybe scoring for one round, if that. Yeah, I think he's too tough to get knocked out. At least maybe in the first round. I don't know if he'll get like a TKO in the second or third round, depending on how much punishment he takes. But I'm also jumping on the Storm bandwagon. Yes, so this could be the beginning of several Mongolian fighters, sort of like the Georgian fighters, um, stamping their, making their mark in the UFC. So let's go with Batgerel.
Our next bout at flyweight, Sijara Eubanks versus Luana Dread Carolina. And currently, I don't see the odds on this one, nor do I care because I'm not going to bet it. But I will say this, moving down to flyweight for Eubanks, she's looked incredibly strong. She's had issues at 135, fighting some tough competitors, Caitlin Vieira and Pani Kianzad. But when she moved down to fight Elise Reed, and mind you, I'm not putting a whole ton of stock on that win against Elise Reed. Elise Reed had really no business in there with Eubanks, but Eubanks beat her ass, and that was easy money all day, every day. But yeah, at this very weight class, she's going to be maybe the 1 or 2 round fighter that if she takes you to the ground, pray to God you can like hold on for dear life. For Luana Carolina, on the other hand, she's okay. She beat Poliana Botelho. Very close fight within itself, a split decision, and of course, she had her knee ripped apart by Ariane Lipsky. She's okay, right? I guess her biggest thing is that she's a taller girl. She's 5'6" in that division. She will have a 2-inch reach advantage. She's primarily a striker. She's kind of sloppy in there. Sarge, on the other hand, she's more technical, but she's more stiff with her striking. And of course, her ground game. She's a very, very accomplished black belt on the ground for jiu-jitsu. For me, it's pretty simple. You have to go with Sarge by submission. She will take Luana down. Her takedown defense isn't phenomenal. She's willing to give up her knee in weird situations against Lipsky. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. We'll see how this fight plays out. But yeah, I'm interested to see if this fight does go beyond the second round, how Sarge is going to look, because she's been notorious for kind of slowing down even at 135. So we'll see what she looks like at 125. But I got Eubanks to win this one. I'll say a second round submission.
I agree completely. I think if she's going to get the submission, it'll probably be toward the end of the first, possibly sometime in the second round. Because in the third round, I don't know how going down in weight is going to affect her cardio. She's not exactly a cardio machine, but I think she has enough to make this a less dreadful fight. I don't know if you caught that there, because Luana's name is Dread. Appropriately, her fights are kind of dreadful. But anyway, not going to spend too much more time on this. Sijara, I'll definitely include her in the part. No, actually, never mind.
Yeah, no.
She
gasses out and gets TKO'd in the third. No, thank you.
I'll probably include her in my Hail Mary $1 parlay or something. I should say I'll include her on a $1 parlay. $1 Hail Mary. It won't be my main one. It'll just be I just need to get it out of my system. I'm like, hey, I need to make the most out of this. And I believe she will be the naughtier Dread here, because she also has dreads. Anyway, yes, I'm going with Sijara. I'll include her in the parlay, but I'm also just going to sprinkle, a little bit on that submission prop, since it's very possible. But knowing me, my luck, she'll probably get a bunch of submission attempts, and none of them will, pan out. She'll just dominate, on the ground.
About at welterweight, we've got about between Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts and Razaman Emeev. And currently the odds on this bout, we have Emeev minus 225, come back on Roberts plus 185. Appropriate, I would say. Emeev, we know what Emeev's all about. He's a decision machine, right? That's all he does. He has no interest in, finishing a fight. If it comes to him, he'll think about it before he decisions you. But his recent wins against Nicholas Stolze and also David Zawada by split decision. This guy is primarily a guy that can, hold guys against the cage, primarily strikers, and coast to a decision, whether it be a split decision or a unanimous decision. That's really all what he's about. He is susceptible to low kicks, as we've seen. His last loss was against Anthony Rocco Martin, where he just consistently threw leg kicks, which really threw off Emeev. I'm kind of bored talking about this one already because I already know Emeev's going to win by decision. That's my pick for Danny Roberts, man. He's been kind of off and on for a while. Like he had a pretty good run for a bit. He's kind of had an issue with the chin because Mike Perry, I remember betting Mike Perry against Danny Roberts in UFC 204. And, that was a tough fight for him. He ended up getting knocked out. Claudio Silva, we know what happened there. He didn't tap. It was a verbal submission, really sucky for him. Michel Pereira made a spectacle out of the chin of Danny Roberts by that flying knee and knockout. And then he comes back and he knocks out Zelim Imadaev, a guy who, oddly enough, got submitted by Michel without the hooks. And funny enough, he didn't tap, but he seemingly accepted the loss, even though he didn't tap and the referee stopped the fight, Imadaev, that is. So a knockout win over a guy who's no longer in the UFC is not like a big deal to me. I know Danny Roberts. He's a very, very good striker. He's very long. He's 6'1", 74-inch reach compared to the 5'10", 68.5-inch reach for Emeev. But Emeev, that's his bread and butter, man. He's been doing this longer. He hasn't been taking a lot of damage to the head anyways. He's been consistent. His last fight was 8 months ago compared to a year and 10 months ago, nearly 2 years for Danny Roberts. And yeah, he's more active. I'll go with Emeev to win by a decision, just holding up against Cage as he always does.
Yes, I'm going with Emeev by decision. I think Danny Roberts will take either the first round or possibly a third round, depending on whether he starts strong or he finishes strong. But I don't think he's going to be strong for more than one round or so I think he'll have, just enough for one to maybe win one round, unless he decides to just back up the whole time and let me get his hands on him.
At strawweight, we have Ariane Carnelossi versus a newcomer, Estela Nunes. For Nunes, she is a import from One Fighting. I had to do some research on her. I've never seen her fight, but her fight with Angela Lee was pretty damn entertaining. Eventually, she succumbed to the anaconda choke, but it was a very fun fight to watch. Currently, the odds have it in favor of, it looks like Carnelossi is the favorite on this one. Currently, she is a minus 185 comeback on Nunes, plus 150. And I was watching tape on Nunes, and I'm like, okay, what has this girl got? She's a multiple-time Muay Thai champion. Watching her fight in MMA, though, much is left to be desired with her striking. Like, I know she can probably do well in Muay Thai, but in MMA, it just seemed a little off to me. Like her punches were coming from a mile away. Like, she's a competent striker, especially for women's strawweight. But when it comes to like down the line fighting accomplished grapplers, it's problematic. So I'm looking back and thinking, oh, you know what? I think Carnelossi's got this pretty easily. She's a very strong woman, very beautiful buff arms. Looks like she can give me a good pegging. So I'm looking back and watching her fight against Na Liang, and I remember in my head thinking, yeah, like it was a very fun fight, but clearly Carnelossi was winning that fight. I go back and watch it. I'm like, holy shit, my bet on Carnelossi at that night must have really skewed my brain because she got cracked within the first second of that fight, nearly got finished. And honestly, it was all Na Liang in that fight. And what I mean is that Na Liang pushed the pace. Na Liang nearly finished. Na Liang gassed herself out, and Na Liang made Carnelossi look like a world beater for a second because it was like, oh my God, this girl sucks so bad that Carnelossi ended up TKOing her with some pretty like non-effective ground and pound. Eventually, I think the referee just kind of felt bad for Na Liang and called it. Yeah, man, this is so not something you want to bet on. This is a dog or pass for me. I think Carnelossi, she's wild in there. She's a stronger girl. She's not going to have much in the advantage because her striking, although she can crack, man. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you she can't knock out Nunes somehow. She's a capable fighter. It's just that at those odds, after watching that last fight again against Na Liang, knowing that she can get hit and she is very hittable against the girl. Yeah, granted, her striking isn't, oh my God, incredible, like godlike. I'm not going to sit here and, gush over it, but it's competent enough to potentially finish Carnelossi. I can see her getting cracked by something that she's not expecting, and then the fight being over. So if you're thinking about betting this one, probably don't. If you are potentially bet on the underdog, there's some value there, but I wouldn't say go out there and change the line. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Nunes to win this one. I was just so unimpressed by that last fight for Carnelossi that I'm like, yeah, there is a chance that Nunes could win this. Frankly, I don't care about this fight. I will watch it, of course, just to see how well Nunes adapts in the UFC. But yeah, she's 7-1 compared to the 13-2. Everything's telling me Carnelossi should win this one just based on the strength advantage, the power advantage, of course, and just the better fights that she's had. I guess a better competition, I should say. But yeah, no, I think I'll go with Nunes on this one, dog or pass for me. I'll say by decision, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not really confident in any pick, but if I have to go with the side here, I'll go with Ariane. No confidence whatsoever. I'm not sold on Nunes yet. I don't, I don't want that bias from Amanda to skew anybody's like, oh, hey, here's another Nunes. She's gonna, yeah, no, it's not that case either. Yeah, if you have to make a bet here, I'd suggest you don't. But if you feel like you absolutely have to, I'd say the over is maybe the better bet because I don't see either one of these girls finishing the other. I could be wrong, but my suggestion is just stay away from this altogether.
Next bout, much, much better fight. Ludovic, Mr. Highlight Klein versus Nate, the Train Landwehr. And currently the odds on this one are minus 300 for Klein, comeback on Landwehr, plus 230. And I think to myself, is there some value on Landwehr in this position? He's not really looked all that great in the UFC. He came in from M1, all this hype around him beating the Russians, very fun guy, swanging and banging type of guy from Tennessee. And he comes into the UFC and he gets knocked out by Herbert Burns, which was like, okay, that was unexpected. And then he comes in here and he beats Darren Elkins. And then I'm not going to lie to you guys, I had a bet on Landwehr, but I think there's an argument you can say that Darren Elkins won that fight. And then the fight with Julian Erosa, it was just unfortunately for Landwehr, he had a really tall, lanky guy wanting to kind of put a stamp in the UFC, like, hey, man, I'm an exciting fighter. And he proved it, right? He knocks out Landwehr. And now he's fighting a guy who is known for his highlights. His head kick over Shane Young was fantastic. This guy is he's a powerful striker, man. That left head kick, beware, man. This guy strikes very, very well. He's a very powerful, very, very fun guy to watch. Even his fight against Mike Trezano, although that was a very close fight and Mike ended up winning that one, I have to say I thought Klein won it. Even with my bet on it, I was very confident going into that decision. I'm like, okay, I'm fine. Klein's going to win. When I heard Trezano, I'm like, oh, crap. Like I can see it, but I was very confident Klein won it. But it is what it is. It's a good lesson for Klein. But in this position right now, we have Nate Landwehr not really living up to a whole ton of potential. So there's a chance he can come in here buck wild, right? Kamikaze mission. Because he's that type of guy, man. He'll go in there and he'll fight anybody the same exact way, put up your Duke style. So there's a chance he can crack Ludovic Klein. There's no doubt about it. That's a possibility. But honestly, at those odds, Klein, everyone seems to be on that side. Even on Tapology, they have Klein to win roughly by 73% by knockout. And that's how I see it, unfortunately. Like I like Nate Landwehr, but Ludovic Klein, man, he's very technical and bearing, of course, some sort of a puncher's chance from Nate Landwehr. I see him getting put out again. His chin has been just cracked one too many times in the UFC. And yeah, when you get knocked out by Julian Erosa like that, Ludovic Klein is going to make this easy. So I'll go with Klein to win this one by a first round knockout. We'll see how Nate looks. So at those odds at the plus 230, it's not too bad of a bet to sprinkle on, maybe like a $5 by knockout bet for for Nate Landwehr. I'm assuming that should kind of bump it up to maybe potentially like a plus 350 at the very least. But my pick would be Klein by knockout. I'll probably be spamming that line.
Yeah, I'm also going with Klein here. I'm jumping on that choo-choo train. Unfortunately, I'm not jumping on the Landwehr choo-choo train. Yeah, very possible he gets the knockout. I mean, even though both of these guys are coming off losses, the worst, I guess the worst of it was getting knocked out almost 8 months ago by Julian Erosa, by flying knee, no less. But I think he's had, enough time to recover here. He should make it, hopefully, a competitive fight. He doesn't get knocked out in the opening seconds like he did last time. I don't believe he will. But I think he may take too much punishment, and I think he may get knocked out maybe in the second round or TKO'd. So I'm going with Klein, probably adding him to a parlay, but there's always a possibility of sprinkling that TKO prop. Since Landwehr is coming off a TKO, or he possibly gets TKO'd again.
And before we begin the main card, I'd like to ask, please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I will say, man, once we did our last podcast, we were like at 190 some subscribers, and we're up to like 207, which is like awesome. Like, really, really appreciate all the people recently who've subscribed, all of our previous subscribers. It's very humbling. Like, I know it's not a whole ton, I'm not gonna sit here like we're at 200 and some thousand subscribers, but for us, just kind of starting out, it really means a lot to us. So anyone who's just recently subscribed, we really appreciate it. And leave a comment. Let us know what you think about the fight so far. For this particular fight card, I really, really have the urge to shit on it, just like everyone else, but I don't really want to do that. Like, I know it's a very short notice card. The UFC is really trying to make lemons out of lemonade here. But we'll begin our main card at flyweight. Manon Fiorot versus Mayra Bueno Silva. This is a fight that was moved over to this card. I can't recall if it was due to COVID or something. I can find out. I don't feel like it. All right, but this fight currently, the odds have it at, not really much change since last time. Minus 200 for Fiorot. Come back on Silva, plus 165. I'm going to go with Fiorot. I'm not going to change my pick. My initial pick was Fiorot because the striking, her just overwhelming pressure and pace. She is the anti Caitlin Chukagian. When she actually throws punches and makes a hiya sounds, they actually land and they look like they actually hurt the girl. As for Bueno Silva, like recently, she's been looking better since she initially lost to Marina Moroz. That was a huge letdown for me, right? Because I bet her to beat Moroz and she was just getting outstruck on the feet, just didn't seem to have it that night. She comes back and beats Borella by submission, which, made me some money that night. And then the Montana De La Rosa fight, she looked good, but yeah, that fence grab was problematic. So I'm not going to put too much stock on that itself. Like, although it says a majority decision draw, I think she looked pretty good there. Her striking looked better. But when it comes to an actual accomplished striker like Fiorot, I can see her just getting battered on the feet. So I'm going to go with Fiorot to win this one. She's going to keep doing what she does. As long as she stays on the outside and attacks when she has to, I'm positive that Manon's going to hurt Mayra Bueno Silva at one point. Whether Bueno Silva, rushes for the takedown and gets it, or if she gets it denied, that's going to be a key factor. So if Manon Fiorot, say, lands a kick to the body that really hurts Bueno Silva and she clinches up, is Manon Fiorot going to start blasting knees to the body, or is she going to actually get taken down? I see Manon kind of being a very explosive fighter, but this frankly, I'm not going to lie, this could be the spot where she just finally meets a level competition that makes her look a little average. she hasn't really been fighting the best competition. She fought Veronica Leonardo and she fought on short notice Tabitha Ricci. Both of these girls really had no business being in the same cage with her. So I'll still go with Menon Fiorot to win. We'll see. This could be a huge letdown because of course Bueno Silva has better experience, fought the better competition, but I'm mainly fading Bueno Silva because I don't see her being able to take the striking of Fiorot. I feel like she's going to get kind of a deer in the headlights type of moment, and I don't think her takedowns will be effective against Fiorot. I think Fiorot is just going to be too much. She's going to be able to clearly just disengage in any clinch situation that she doesn't feel comfortable in, and Silva's just going to be forced to strike with her. So I've got Fiorot to win second round knockout.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This is another fight that just isn't really worth betting on. I'm still sticking with my Bueno Silva. I think she'll probably tough it out, maybe get a split decision at best. At worst, she's probably going to get battered on her feet if she doesn't wise up and take it to the ground. I think that's where she has her best shot. But yeah, I think more likely than not, this is going the distance. So if you have to bet on this, which one more fight, I recommend you stay as far away from as you can. I think this fight is going the distance. So I'll take Myra with zero confidence whatsoever. That the fight is going the distance with a little bit of confidence, like maybe 4.5% confidence.
At middleweight, we've got one of the greatest nicknames of all time, Andrew El Dirte Sanchez versus Bruno Silva. I'm starting to really, really like this new Bruno Silva, man. Like after watching tape when he initially fought Wellington Turman, I'm like, man, is there any more confidence that I can feel at this point after watching all his tape? Like this is a guy who knocked out Alexander Shlemenko in M1, although that was what 3 years ago. He hadn't fought in some time. He comes into the UFC, and just 3 months ago, he knocks out Wellington Turman. And yeah, that was some of the nastiest ground and pound I've ever seen. It's almost like he has cinder blocks literally in his fist because he wasn't generating ungodly like power, a lot of torque. He was just tapping him, and his head was bouncing off the canvas. And I think the odds are going to reflect that. It's minus 130 for Silva comeback on Sanchez plus 110. I was not expecting that. Those are really good odds on Bruno Silva to win this one. I don't know why he's not a huge favorite. Andrew Sanchez in the UFC, he's had some ups and downs. He's had he's had some success. Funny enough, both of these guys knocked out Wellington Turman, and it's really tough. I'm thinking who knocked him out better? Just like maybe it's a tie. I guess the flashier one would be Andrew Sanchez, but yeah, Bruno, I think his power impressed me more. Sanchez, I understand why the fight is very close. Wellington Turman took down Bruno Silva. Silva was able to reverse and just beat his brains in. So there's a chance, of course, Sanchez could take it to the ground. But before he does that, he has to avoid getting touched on the chin. He's been knocked out multiple times before, even by a middleweight Anthony Smith in the past. So just recently, Mahmoud Muradov knocked him out. I'll reserve my feelings about Mahmoud for a different video, but I do have Silva to win this one. I think his power is just really at this point very unnatural, and I think he's going to catch Andrew Sanchez eventually. I'm going to say round number 2. I think the first round, Sanchez will do anything in his power to not get hit and try to take Bruno Silva down. Bruno's no slouch, I can't remember specifically if he's quoted as a black belt, but I know his jiu-jitsu is solid, and I know he'll be able to get up. And if it does hit the ground, maybe he can just hit him with a hammer fist from his back and maybe even knock out Sanchez. But I do have Silva to win this one by knockout. My prediction, second round.
Yeah, one thing to note actually about Wellington Turman, he is he actually came to split decision with Sam Alvey late, as of late, which was a couple months ago. So I wouldn't put too much stock in these guys. Yes, they both, knocked the hell out of Turman, but Turman's at a point where he's split decisioning Sam Alvey. So let's take that for what you will. As far as the side, I'm also going with Silva. I think it's a closer fight than what people think, but I think he's rightly the favorite. And as you mentioned, the odds, don't look a gift. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Take it for what it is. Because when you have, odds for a favorite like that, just take it and run with it. Add them to. I'll just say, just go with it. I don't want to jinx it for anybody. But going with Silva, possibly KO, but definitely part of a solid, I'd say, maybe parlay piece for next week.
About also at middleweight, we've got Julian the Cuban Missile Crisis Marquez versus Jordan the Beverly Hills Ninja Wright. And currently the odds have it at minus 200 for Marquez, comeback on Jordan Wright, plus 165. And this one is fascinating because when it comes to the striking, Jordan Wright, of course, he is a ninja in there. He's got fantastic karate, very good kicks, very good knees, very good elbows. He is a very total, he is the total package when it comes to the striking. Very Wonder Boy-esque in there, but at a higher weight class, 205 middleweight. But that chin is absolute trash. Like he got knocked out by Fluffy Hernandez in the Contender Series about 3 years ago. And that speed from Fluffy just completely stifled him, got caught up against the cage and knocked out. And what's funny about Jordan Wright, like his footwork as well, his boxing is ever improving. It's just that when he gets touched, it's very concerning. He got knocked out by Buckley, a guy who is, granted, he's very fast, but he's a much shorter guy. And both of these guys are 6'2", and Buckley is listed at what, 5'10". I initially thought, man, is there a possibility that Buckley could get head kicked? It just so happened to be that it wasn't this fight. It just happened to happen a few fights later. As for Marquez, this guy's a man bear. Literally, this guy is just a beefy, crazy dude from Missouri. And he's fighting out of a Glory MMA and Fitness with James Krause. And the thing about this guy is that he had a layoff due to, I think he had an arm injury that just really stifled him for multiple years, comes back, fights Mackie Patolo. He looked okay, didn't look great, very, very rusty, ends up getting the anaconda choke, pure brute strength. He literally reminds me of a bear in there. Like when he gets his hands on you, you're going to get squeezed. And he submitted Sam Alvey in one of the most devastating, like rear naked chokes, no hooks, and just pure strength, nearly took his head off. And this guy, he hits hard as well. He's been in there with Phil Hawes in the Contender Series. He took an ass whooping from Phil Hawes and ended up knocking him out with a head kick. So he's very tough. Comes from a good camp. There's really a lot of questions when it comes to this fight, because although Marquez is the tougher guy and he hits hard, and Jordan Wright's chin sucks, Jordan Wright is going to have the speed and footwork advantage over Julian Marquez. So it could be very, very close. Honestly, I can see this one going all the way for Jordan Wright. You got your ticket there for Julian Marquez, and you're like, God damn it, man, I can't believe I bet minus 200 on Julian Marquez. Or more realistically, I can't believe that I bet inside the distance for Julian Marquez, and he's about to lose the decision. And then, last round, last minute, he catches Jordan Wright. He goes full berserker mode and knocks him out. That's a possibility. And that's honestly how I see this fight going. So it's very close in my eyes. But yeah, man, Beverly Hills Ninja, his chin, again, I keep bringing it up. It's not the best. His last fight against Jamie Pickett got knocked out. I did not see that coming. I bet Jamie Pickett to win eventually by knockout. I thought he was going to be the more athletic guy, but it seems as if Pickett put himself in bad situations. He tried to take down Jordan Wright against the cage. He got hit in the head with elbows right to the side of the head, very Travis Brown-esque. And then that was just the beginning of the end, I should say, for Jamie Pickett, because Jordan Wright went on an onslaught and eventually got the finish. And I am worried about that in this fight, especially because I do believe Julian Marquez will win this fight, but I can see a lot of very hairy, scary moments in there for him. And that's funny because he is a very hairy and scary guy. But I will go with Marquez to win this one by a third round knockout. I see him eventually catching him. Jordan Wright's going to maybe dance around a bit, pepper him, maybe win the first two, but I can see Julian Marquez eventually just say, fuck it, and go after him. So Julian Marquez, third round knockout for me.
I'm actually going with Jordan Wright here. I think this is a case where it's brute strength versus technique. Yeah, here I'm going with technique over the brute strength. I think technique will prevail. And while Jordan Wright doesn't exactly have the best technique, I think he has enough to stay away from Marquez's power. This isn't, professional wrestling where they're going to, match up, what's that guy's name? Braun Strowman, versus AJ Styles and call that, a realistic matchup. I think here, it's kind of similar to that in that you have, what could be labeled as, the Barbarian coming up against the slightly more refined technique of Jordan Wright. Although that has bitten, a lot of people in the ass before, in cases such as Yoel Romero versus Lyoto Machida, which I don't want to jinx it because that's very similar to this, and that Jordan Wright, does have that kind of, karate style technique with his footwork and kicks and whatnot. But, it was just Lyoto Machida on the downslide and Romero catching him. But anyway, I'm going Jordan Wright here. It's a shot in the dark. This is, I see it as a coin flip fight, but, the odds say go with Marquez. But I honestly do not feel confident in that guy. He very well, could win by knockout, but I don't know. I'm not very confident in him, even though, he did actually take care of business with Sam Alvey, as you said. He almost made it, one of those cases where Alvey's head almost popped off, like a plastic action figure. But anyway, but he did, something to note is that he did lose to Alessio Di Chirico, the guy who I think looks like, reminds or sort of makes me think of how well, Cristiano Ronaldo would do in the UFC or MMA. But anyway, yeah, so I'm taking Jordan Wright by decision. I don't think he'll be able to knock him out.
Co-main event at heavyweight, we've got the Pitbull Andre Arlovski versus Carlos Felipe, aka Boy, which I believe, I could be wrong, is like bull or ox or some shit in Portuguese, whatever. But interesting bout. And the more I really thought about this one, I was like, this is a lot more interesting than I really initially put thought into. Currently, Arlovski is a minus 130 favorite, comeback on Felipe plus 105. And frankly, I can see this one being a pick 'em. Actually, in some, like for example, DraftKings has him as a dead pick 'em minus 110, minus 110. William Hill has it minus 130 for Arlovski, comeback on Felipe plus 105. So yeah, this line is going to be moving quite a bit, and I don't necessarily blame them. I don't blame the bettors for really taking a shot on Felipe. I'm surprised he's not even the favorite. But interesting bout between two guys. The aging veteran, of course, former champion Andre Arlovski fighting a guy, 26 years old. He is 42 years old and he's still fighting in the UFC. I remember when he was in Strikeforce getting knocked out by Brett Rogers and Sergey Karatanov, and people saying he is done and he should retire. And here he is, still fighting in the year of our Lord 2021. This guy, his recent style has really focused more on high impact moments to win the round, opposed to volume. His latest win was against Chase Sherman, where I think a lot of people might have been on Sherman, but I was still firmly on Arlovski. If you're not on a certain level, you're not going to beat Arlovski, and that's been proven time and time again. So, for example, the last guy to beat Arlovski was Tom Aspinall, possible title challenger. The last guy to beat him before that, I should say, Rosenstrike, guy who is, I guess at this time it's not looking great, but a guy who was talked about fighting for an interim title against Francis Ngannou before, Ngannou knocked his head off. Is Felipe one of these guys that can really be talked about in the same stratosphere as Tom Aspinall and Rosenstrike? It's tough to say because right off the bat, his wins not necessarily the most impressive. His last fight against Jake Collier, I honestly thought he lost that fight. I thought Collier ended up winning that just barely. His fight with Justin Tafa, again, split decision, very, very close. He made it very competitive. And then his fight against Jorgen De Castro, very, very similar as well. De Castro looked good in the first round. Then the momentum swung, and then he ended up winning the last two. His fight against Sergey Spivak was a interesting one because we saw how poor his ground game really is if you take him down and you lay on him. A guy as big as Arlovski can potentially do that. He's not known to do that, but it's a possibility. This one's tough because the low output of Arlovski versus the high output of Felipe is possibility for a really nasty split decision that's going to leave a lot of people unhappy, depending on which side you're on, of course. I can see Felipe just throwing a lot of volume, getting most of the rounds, and I can also see Arlovski cracking Felipe and just having the more impactful moments, depending on what judges we have that night. It's up in the air for me. It's a very close fight. I can see this being a split decision. In this situation, I have to go with the dog, of course. When it's 50-50 in my eyes, I go with the plus money. I'll go with Felipe to win this one by a decision. I wouldn't be surprised if Arlovski win this one by a decision. It's, of course, very close. But the way I see it, I think the way Felipe has been fighting, I think his style is more favorable for the judges. Being that I judge fights myself, I will always go with a guy who throws more and is more active opposed to Arlovski. And what I will say about Arlovski, what I've noticed about his fighting style recently is more reserved style, is that although he's not throwing a lot, he does throw in spurts, right? He throws enough in spurts to win the round. So it's like he's a very crafty veteran, man. So it's going to be interesting. Frankly, I think it's going to be kind of a boring fight, but I think Felipe is going to do his best to try to make it as exciting as he can, especially when he starts talking shit in there. But yeah, I'll go with Felipe to win this one by a very, very close decision, split potentially.
I'm actually putting Carlos Felipe in the same circle as Tanner Boser and the guy I would actually confuse him with, which is Philippe Lins. I don't know. Even though they don't look anything alike. They're just names. Anyway, and I guess to a certain extent, Ben Rothwell, in that these are all guys that Arlovski beat handily. He shouldn't have at 42 years old, but he's still beating these guys, man. He's, the Brooklyn Brawler. He's become the Brooklyn Brawler of, the UFC. He's the keeper. He's the litmus test of, all these guys that supposedly want to move up into the top 10. You gotta get past Arlovski. And I don't think Carlos Felipe is ready to get past him just yet. He's a little too jiggly, in my opinion, still. He needs to tone it up. He needs to, being at 26 years old, dude, you got plenty of testosterone left. And when Arlovski's, more fit than you are at 42 years old, that's pretty goddamn embarrassing. That and Arlovski's actually going to be bigger. He's going to be, I think he's going to bully Felipe around. Felipe, I think in his last few fights, he's like gone in there and talked some shit to the guys, and I guess it may or may not have affected the fight. That for sure is not going to work against Arlovski. Arlovski doesn't give a fuck. He's been in there with the best guys of his time, and he's in there with these guys are in the he's still in the UFC. So I'm not going against the pit bull this time. Not with Felipe. If Arlovski was, I don't know, fighting what's that guy's name? He just fought Razor Blades, Curtis Blades. I'd be like, all right, Arlovski's going to get taken down. But Carlos Felipe, he may have enough cardio for maybe one takedown attempt. That is not multiple attempts. So yeah, I don't think he has a chance against Arlovski. Arlovski's going to school him. He's going to school him on the feet. Felipe doesn't really have great kicks or anything to fall back on, and so Arlovski's going to take this by decision.
Main event of the evening: Norma the Immortal Dumont versus Aspen Ladd. And I recently told a joke about Aspen Ladd. It's like I think the weigh-ins for this past week's UFC event. The which one was it? It hasn't happened yet. We're recording this on Friday. The what the fuck was it? What's happening this week?
It's what's her name? The jujitsu girl versus
Oh,
the
Dern
taller.
versus
Yes,
Ortigas.
Dern.
So yeah, I'm watching the fucking weigh-ins. I'm just like, oh, I'm just here to see who graduated from the Aspen Ladd School for Fighters Who Can't Cut Weight Good. And turns out it was Deron Win. I don't know what the fuck happened to Deron Win. But anyways, enough about my stupid fucking jokes. Norma Dumont versus Aspen Ladd at 145. Very interesting because just recently Aspen Ladd could not make 135. So she's had a botched weight cut, and now she's moving up in weight in mere weeks and fighting Norma Dumont, a girl who has consistently fought at featherweight. It's fascinating to me, and I might not put a whole ton of thought into this fight, so I apologize in advance. But I'll give you my initial reactions to when I heard this. But I'll read the odds and fascinating minus 120 for Aspen Ladd, comeback of Norma Dumont plus 100. And when I heard that she's moving up in weight to fight Norma Dumont in mere weeks, and after having a botched weight cut where she looked god awful, Aspen Ladd is one of these fighters that when you see her in the weigh-in, she looks freaking terrible. She's shaking, and it's not a good look. And then what was it? Misha Tate even accused her of trying to cheat the scale. But the first thing that popped in my head was, do you remember when Tony Ferguson was supposed to fight Khabib? Khabib pulled out for the seventh time, and then Justin Gaethje got put in there. But Khabib happened to do or not Khabib, I'm sorry, but Tony did a test weight cut during the night or the day actually of the alleged weigh-ins that should have happened that time, and that completely fucked him up. And when he fought Justin Gaethje like a couple weeks later, he did not look like the same Tony Ferguson. That's why I'm fading Aspen Ladd. Aspen Ladd, she's undersized at 135, and I know that she's coming up in 145, and she's 5'6", and Norma Dumont's 5'7". But again, I think Norma's going to be a much heavier girl, and that's funny to say. Coming I'm saying that Aspen Ladd's not going to be the heavier girl. She might even miss weight this time, but just watching Norma Dumont, she's a thick girl. Her legs are ridiculously huge, and I don't think Aspen Ladd's going to have the best gas tank or, frankly, overall cardio to deal with Norma Dumont. Norma Dumont is if I recall correctly, I think she's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So she's not a scrub off of her back. She's not a scrub in general. I'm sorry. She's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. She's a black belt in Sanda. Her striking is very good. Aspen Ladd's striking is not good at all. She's primarily a girl that will take you down and try to ground and pound you. I don't know how well that's going to work out for her against Norma Dumont. Again, Norma's very strong. Her striking is very crisp. I was watching tape on her last fight against Felicia Spencer. Felicia Spencer is basically a better version of Aspen Ladd because she has better striking. She is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, and Felicia Spencer had trouble with Norma Dumont. She got taken down by Norma Dumont. Her striking did not look as crisp against Norma Dumont. And Michael Bisping was cumming his pants talking about how really, really, it's so beautiful, the striking of Norma Dumont. It's okay, right? But it is very nice. At plus 100, fading a girl that, again, has been inconsistent with the weight cuts. God knows if she's going to make weight this time. Short notice, I got to go with Norma Dumont to win this one. Last time we saw Aspen Ladd fight a former featherweight, she got her head knocked off, and that was Jermaine Duranamine. She was a former featherweight champion. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's going to happen, but I can see Norma Dumont landing something impactful, even knocking out Aspen Ladd. But yeah, my official pick is going to be Norma Dumont winning this one by a decision. I would not be surprised if that weight cut completely fucks with Aspen Ladd and she gets finished again. But yeah, there's no way I'm picking Aspen Ladd to win this one. Maybe she does win. Maybe she takes down Norma Dumont and beats her ass, but I rather lose money on Norma Dumont, a girl who has been consistent and never missed weight, opposed to betting Aspen Ladd, a girl who is just maybe I'm still salty when she like cried sexism against Herb Dean for stopping that fight against her and Jermaine Duranamy, where she got cracked once. She fell down and they stopped the fight. And she's bitching and moaning about, oh, they stopped the fight. If it was a man, they wouldn't have done that. Well, bitch, you fucking cut weight the day before and you were shaking like you're about to pass out. Yeah, I think Herb Dean saved your life. So I'll go with Norma Dumont to win this one. Fuck it. Second round knockout. I'll do that.
Yeah, this is funny. If anything, Holly Holm did Norma Dumont a favor. I think Holly Holm would have beat her by decision.
Yes.
So she actually did her a favor, and in that Norma Dumont is going to get the win bonus here against the female Kelvin Gastelum.
Glad you brought it up, dude, because that's one thing I forgot to bring up. The fight camp. Norma Dumont had a fight camp against Holly Holm. Much better fighter.
After this fight, or actually even before this fight, Aspen should, change her nickname to Lard, Aspen Ladd. Anyway, that's I'm pretty sure that's the Simpsons character with the I'm pretty sure that's where
that is. Yes,
Aspen spends her time anyway. Not really much to break down here. As you already pointed out, Normal's already fought. Funny enough, you said was a better version of as I was going to say Ladd, Aspen. In Felicia Spencer. Felicia Spencer's, she's pretty thick herself. She doesn't wear the revealing, the sort of, mid-crop, whatever those things are called, that the girls wear when they fight, because she has, she has a little bit extra in her midsection. But anyway, she's thick. Norma Dumont, she's also, she goes after it with the takedowns and whatnot. But Norma was able to, get the W there. So Aspen Ladd's going to be a lesser Felicia to an extent. So I wouldn't be surprised if she gets a knee in the face and just crumbles like a cookie. So I'm going with Norma. Not much more to break down. If anything, Norma should send Holly Holm a basket, what is it? A basket of cookies, a bucket of cookies, something. She should send her
a bucket of cookies.
I don't know, something, as a thank you for allowing her to get the win bonus this time around. I mean, I think they should actually fight down the road, maybe in, I don't know how devastating Holly Holm's supposed injury is.
Mm-hmm.
But if, they can fight by December or something, or if not, then yeah, she should definitely send her that bucket of cookies.
And before we go, we do have our opinions on possible parlays. I'll be 100% frank with you. As much as I don't want to shit on this card, it's really tough to really give you a definitive, number of people to bet consecutively to win. A couple guys that I have in mind would be Ludovic Klein. Let's just say we go with him on the money line. Who else do we have on this card that I'm fairly confident in? We had a couple guys that, fights that got pulled off, like Kennedy and Zetriku versus Dawoon Jung. That would have been a really hell of a fun fight. But this card really suffered from injuries, unfortunately. But, I'll probably go with Razaman Emeev as well as that'll be my base parlay. And then on top of that, I might add Bruno Silva on there. So if we add those three I'm fairly confident in, I might actually go with that particular parlay. We get a plus 234. This is again through my local casinos, like what they call like a bet builder. So it gives me all the information. I can scan it at my local casino and they'll take my money and give me a ticket. But those are probably the only ones that I'm fairly confident in. I might add a couple other people in there, like Julian Marquez, probably I might just do straight money line, but I might play around with him by a knockout or just finish. And then that's about it for me, really. I'm not confident in the Carnelossi fight. I'm not confident really in the Arlovski fight. And the main event, I might just bet Norma Dumont straight. But yeah, with those four people, Klein, Marquez, Emeev, and Silva, I get a plus 401. And that's not too bad. I might not bet too much to this card because, again, I'm not super confident in this one. or slash I might have blown my entire wad on the Fury versus Wilder fight. But yeah, these fights should be fun. I'm very optimistic, but yeah, I'm not going to spend too much money on this card.
Yeah, speaking of Fury, man, that guy came in at 277. Jesus, that doesn't boxing have a limit? I mean, I could have sworn like when I first saw that, I was like, I thought I thought I saw him come in at 377. I was like, holy shit. But then I looked closer and I was like looking at my phone and I was like, oh, I guess it's 277. Jesus,
He's
and
gonna try to do that bully thing again, just bully him around the ring.
yeah. Well, what's his face came in at 230 something, so he's still outweighing him by 40 plus pounds.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. That's anyway. I think Fury is going to take it again, but I think they're going to go the distance this time. I don't think. I don't know. Wilder, if and when he loses, he's probably going to complain about something in the back, somebody spiking his water, or his Old English or something, whatever he drinks in the back. Anyway, so as far as my parlay, I'm actually going with Jim Miller, Dana Batgerel. I'm going with Ramazan Emeev, Ludovic Klein. I'm going with Bruno Silva, Andre Arlovski, and Norma Dumont. I actually will put down money in case any of those. So what I do is I will put in a bet for, I'll go all out, with all those picks. And then if for some reason one of those bastards, hopefully early on, but it sucks when you have you have a really good parlay going. You get to the main event and then your main event fucks your whole, set of parlay. Like, wow, I got like 3 or 4 parlays and I just need the main event win, and then fuck, they lose. So that would suck. But I have confidence in Norma Dumont just because Aspen Ladd, yeah, man, she's not looking good physically. She's not looking good, fight wise, technique wise. I don't think she's going to be, even despite being 9-1. Yeah, I don't think she belongs in the UFC, man.
And those have been our picks for UFC Fight Night, Ladd versus Dumont. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, especially leave a comment if you like girls with a little extra in the midsection. Johnny and Jose with TigerBomb MMA, and we'll catch you at the next fight.